Gennady, do you know what my question is? Who is today an ally of the Ukrainian people? Can you list it? Of the people. Not bureaucracy, not Tolasocrats, Zelensky and so on, but precisely the Ukrainian people. I understand what you're driving at, that we have Trump as an ally, he helps us and fuck he helps us, Trump. Today, Trump is playing the game of the military-industrial complex, and, on the other hand, is flirting with his own electorate. Does he feel sorry for the Ukrainian people, but he doesn't give a shit about the Ukrainian people. Unfortunately, now it seems that they are ready to delay, get bogged down in negotiations. I keep asking myself the question, could the United States of America have prevented this war? Could Trump have been in power for almost a year already, let's say since December, still fulfill his election promise, and force Putin to stop? And I always have the answer yes, 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 yes. Therefore, apparently, the moment has not come when they are ready to make a deal and force Ukraine to give in to the maximum. To yield to the maximum. But I have to oppose here why. Because in principle, the fact that Trump could not do it so far is obvious, because he had to prepare the Arab countries as well. It is impossible to come to an agreement with socialist Europe, which it is impossible to collect it in a heap there. But besides that, there is also China, India, which need to solve the issue with these tariff options in order to put pressure on it. And in principle, he presses from all sides, no matter how it was. Therefore, what he could not, he says one thing, but it turns out another. I agree with that. But Trump's vector is not changing. I'm not defending Trump personally. I just want to say that this socialism has led to this situation over the past 50, or we can say 100 years. Therefore, what Trump is doing now, along with these social media add-ons, Europe plus the UN, which need to be dispersed clearly according to the recent events. Therefore, of course, it is not easy to turn the other side into this scoop and solve some problems in order to stop the war. This is my opinion. Well, the opinion is correct, as all Republicans, which came in the elections, and said that in 24 hours, I will stop this war. Many Ukrainians voted, including for Trump, so that the war in Ukraine would stop faster. Then excuses begin that there are too many leftists, I underestimated, I did not study. And why did you talk for 24 hours? And I will? Because the election campaign had to include the votes of Ukrainians in America. Well, 24 hours. Come on. It's too much of a difference. 24 hours. It would be fine if they lasted a month there, then 6 months. It's been a year now. It's been a year now. And we are at the stage when, unfortunately, Trump once again says that, well, another 30 days. 30 more days. That is, there were 50 days, now 30 days, then what? 15 days, and then we'll all celebrate 40 days. All right. You are Trump in January, the 20th of January, your actions. What do you mean? Well, you're Trump. Let's say you're President Trump. Am I the President of America? No, you're not the President, but we're just kind of criticizing his actions. That is, and I would do this. I would develop a directive like this. As it should be. Perfect. Well, taking into account the interests of Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, China, everyone. Directive. This is the most powerful, so to speak, hegemon, one might say, in the world of the military. Here he writes a directive, according to which he takes into account all interests, and speaks directive. To the detriment of someone, probably somehow. Well, he directively conveys his directive thought to the knowledge of everyone. That's how it should be? Here are the regions here, the people here, the country like this, the dividing line like this. Well, descriptive. I'm talking about the whole thing now. So, and brings this directive to everyone. And says, who does not obey, I am not to blame. But how does it work? We don't have a directive, we don't know what the United States of America wants, we guess, then we need a dividing line. Then we need a demarcation zone, then we need the Russian language, then we need to protect religion. Then we need to go all this together according to the Memorandum of Russia, then not according to the Memorandum of Russia. Now you can formulate to me what goal the United States of America is achieving. I mean, not only to say the word we are for peace. Yes, I understand, they want the war to stop, everything is clear here. And what will Ukraine be like? According to Trump, his administration, can you draw it yourself now? Yes, I can. Later. Now the rule. Yes, that's what Ukraine should be like. Because Trump proposes to resolve the issue of stopping military operations, stopping the war, regardless of territorial concessions. And these. Trump's directive, Ukraine should give 6,000 square kilometers. This is the end of the Donetsk region, and there are some territories to get back, make a deal. Right? He's offering a deal. That's right. How does it offer or not? So he suggests. And who will make these concessions? Zelensky will not go because he understands this loss. I think this is Trump's directive. Trump is the most, he also says, I am the most powerful man Trump in the world. I am Super Trump. I am the Trump of all the Trumps of the world. If it wasn't for Trump, there wouldn't be a Trump. That is, Trump himself is a golden Trump for himself. And here he is the most powerful man, at the head of the most powerful super army, the Super Pentagon, which has already been renamed the Ministry of War, so he says, this is how it should be. Us talk, us. I'm not saying Zelensky. And he probably says this to Zelensky there secretly in the Oval Office, hugging him, Volodya, that's how it should be. Volodya turns out to be a completely different matter. He says that. Like this or not. The fact is that if Trump had voiced we are America, we are the people of America, having studied the issue from all sides. We believe that it should be like this. The demarcation zone, there is 20 kilometers of separation of troops, the installation of a demarcation line there. You will consult with whom? The troops are standing right here and all are not moving. So he suggested it. Let's do it like this. I think they had an agreement between them. Probably to give it away. I do not exclude that it is possible to give the Donetsk region there, and so on. I hear something else. There's Trump speaking out, saying that Russia is losing a paper tiger there. We will give Ukraine weapons and so on. They don't sit down at the negotiating table. I hear it. I can't hear what you're saying. He doesn't speak. He says that by the 91st year, Ukraine can liberate territories, reach Moscow. He's playing with words. Then we what? Sarcasm. Yes, there are negotiations going on somewhere. It seems like they have already agreed. Now they have begun to spread. That something has been agreed there somewhere. What have we agreed on? Where is the directive of the United States of America? But he says something else. Let them agree on it themselves. Let the Europeans decide. That's right, because he says, you will at least elementary agree on some points. Otherwise you do not understand anything from the place at all. Do you hear what I'm saying? Does Trump have a solution to the problem, or is there no solution to the problem? If he does not have a solution to the problem, he says, you will agree there, and I will be the arbitrator. Well, coordinate this case. And at the same time, at this moment, he can arm even more, give weapons even more, intrigue, shift, receive, that is. He can do anything. He's an intermediary, he is. Trump rightly said, this is not my war. Here's Trump speaking for all of America, right? This is not my war. It's Biden's war, Clinton's out there. You know that? Yes. And this is America. This institute. This is a country that took Ukraine, which invested money in Ukraine. Created 180 or 190 non-governmental organizations, and contributed to this for almost 20 years. She created all this, brainwashed Ukrainians. Let's clarify. She is a Democratic Party. No. With all the Republicans, too. There was Trump Judy worked, there was Bush Judy worked. Under Bush, they came in. Wait, don't. Yes. There were different presidents, Republicans, Democrats. UC worked in Ukraine. Ukrainians have been brainwashed for 30 years. For what? You go to NATO, you go there to Europe, everything is right. Now Trump says, this is not my war. That is finally. Wait, Trump, and you, dear, what happened during your first cadence? The period of the first cadence was the introduction of NATO membership in Ukraine into the constitution. You didn't prevent it, did you? No. In other words, you believed, your administration believed then that Ukraine has the right to join NATO, has the right to join. And it was amicably brainwashed by Ukrainians on NATO, including me, including you. NATO, 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 Ukrainian, Armavir, Vera, Mova, Army. Why not? Washed, washed. Why did you glue to Trump? Trump. Because it's in his period. No, no, wait. His responsibility begins with the 16th year, right? The 16th. In the 16th year, he gave javelins. Yes. He did not recognize the Russian Crimea. Did not recognize the Crimea, and no one recognized the Crimea. That he still owed 16. He gave javelins when he introduced this NATO into the constitution, right? In other words, he gave signals that yes, Ukraine is joining NATO. Is it logical? Make it into the constitution. The way they led Ukraine now, Dubinsky, speaking in court, he says, the US ambassador is calling Zelensky himself. This is back in the days when there were still elections. The US ambassador calls and says, you are there, remove Dubinsky from the faction. Sanctions were imposed on him. Well, I mean, what does he open? That they call President Zelensky directly from the US embassy, give instructions on who to remove, who to appoint. But these are already Biden times. But the same thing happened in Trump's times. They gave javelins, they gave javelins, they gave javelins. NATO allowed that this item was introduced. Made. All right. Next. The Biden period passes, the war begins. Trump comes back, is he? Trump, in his first cadence, blocked the Nord Stream, told Europe that take it away, stop buying oil and gas from them. And then ask me to protect you. That is, even then he raised these questions, well, as if they were the main ones. I don't mind, he raised questions about the Nord Stream. This is all a series of positions of all us presidents. Even the Democrats, even these. They are going in this direction. That is, Ukraine is in NATO, right? Armavir, Ukraine is such an aggressive state that is separating from the Russian Federation. This is all the policy of the United States of America on the territory of Ukraine. Well, it makes sense. The most important thing is that they have what position? In order for Ukraine not to return to the bosom of the Russian Federation in any case, the Russian Federation should not restore the empire. Europe needs Ukraine. NATO needs Ukraine as a territory with people. Well, that's right. Does everyone think so or not? Trump. Trump doesn't think so. Are we with the Western world or with the Eastern one? Trump does not believe that Ukraine should join NATO, and he did not think so before that. And the fact that there was a train going that is, when he was counting. The last 30 years. They fooled their heads after the collapse of the Soviet Union, that they had to go somewhere to Europe. During this time, Europe has turned, we can see for ourselves that. That's why Trump is now against Europe. Come on the other hand, who is the opponent? In what year was the entry into NATO introduced into the Constitution of Ukraine? Well, it's Poroshenko that. Poroshenko. Poroshenko, with whom was the president? Under Trump. Trump's ambassador to the United States did not call Poroshenko and said, do you hear there, you do not overreact to the Constitution. And do you want to remember who this ambassador represented in Ukraine at that time? It's been since then. That is, Biden. So Trump didn't change the ambassador to Ukraine. Yes. I looked at it, gave javelins, looked at it from above, was not interested in Ukraine. So much? As much press as he got the first cadence, it's hard to say what he could have done at all. Me. Therefore, blame him as well. I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I am saying that the state, the United States of America, is the most powerful, the strongest, headed by the best and greatest president of the world in the history of the United States of America, Trump, today refuses what they have been doing for 30 years in Ukraine. From NATO. Well, it makes sense. Now they are talking about NATO Ukraine. He has been criticizing the whole direction for 40 years, everything that America has done in recent years, including Bush, Obama, Biden, and so on. That is, he turned it around 180 degrees. Okay, you're welcome, you can turn America around wherever you want. Please. But for 30 years, America has been brainwashing Ukrainians on NATO, on armament, on confrontation, on Mova, Vera, and so on. That's who the dark forces were in Ukraine. They rose up, and the military regime of Zelensky has already happened quintessentially. During all this time, the United States of America, with different presidents, with different leaders, went in the same direction. To NATO, to Ukraine. Well, that's right. 33 years, Ukraine together with. He came, he said. Together. And you know, I've been criticizing this all the time. We need to slow down. You are not going to NATO. Imagine your forehead against a concrete wall. Baba. Well, those who accompanied NATO, the same Poroshenko. He already says, I did as America said. I did it for America. I didn't try for myself, for Europe, for NATO. I dragged it into the Constitution. I put everyone with cancer. I made him hold all these things like this and say that we are in NATO. But it was the same. Well, let's be honest, but Ukraine. Nah, me. Okay, we are bad. We are bad with you there. Ukrainians are bad, political scientists are bad, presidents are idiots. I don't think so. But I considered Ukraine here, that Ukraine itself is bad. A young democracy has chosen the right vector in NATO, in Europe. The main ally, the United States of America, is constantly calling America. America constantly gives directives. At 30, he says one thing. Then the new president comes and says, you know, I've always disagreed with all of them here. And the Ukrainian establishment only woman head against the wall. And here comes the end of the war full of strife in the country. In other words, everyone already knows that Trump said we are not going to NATO. These European leaders took turns saying that NATO is not for an hour. And why the fuck are we fighting? My answer. For 33 years, presidents have been replaced under the leadership of Soros and the socialists of Europe. 33. Bush is not a Republican at all. This is a parody of a Republican. Republicans. The party? We can go further, that if we go deeper, this is a two-party system and so on. This has all been bureaucratized for many years. I'm not interested in America, I'm interested in Ukraine. Me. America as a country, as an institution of power, as a dominant country took Ukraine under its care. Supervised it all under its care, brought it to such a state. I'm not accusing that it was Trump who brought it. I say that for 33 years. I blame this America too. The blackest thoughts have taken Ukrainians out of their heads, turned them into some strange people who rush at each other. Fight because of language, because of religion, because of the war, because of the army, because of sanctions, because of anything. They chose a super evil person from the artists. And who contributed, who polls conducted. And all this Zelensky also happened under Trump. Wow. Under Trump. What? How did Trump not climb into Ukraine at all during the first cadence? He gave the only thing to Duvallin, and said that Crimea was not his, blocked the flow of Russian, and forced NATO to pay 2% then. Who said they wanted to break it up? There is no continuity. There is no continuity. The company has accumulated loans owed to someone. Then comes a new leader. You know, I disagree with the previous management. I will not pay back loans, nor obligations. Well, because you are now speaking for the country, for the United States of America. Yes, because we believe that neither in Trump was he in a certain cadence. We believe in America. We believe that Americans are smarter than us, their institutions are smarter than us, they will tell us where to go. And we will not hit our forehead against the wall. No. 100 years. I'll explain it to you like this. There was no capitalism in America for 100 years. There was solid socialism there, which influenced America, developed this China, instead of taking taxes from their people. They moved all production to another country. Now we have to fight with China. Therefore, this socialism, which has been growing like a tumor for 100 years. This is now only Trump trying to stop at the moment. And that. I am interested in Ukraine. What is he doing in Ukraine? He said 24 hours I will stop the war. But he's a vector. Then 30 days after the inauguration, I will definitely stop the war. Then I will definitely stop the war for 100 days. Here we are at the end of September, in my opinion, the first job. 50 days have already passed, Alaska has already been there. I ask you, what is the directive of Trump, America, what to do in Ukraine? Do not tell me that Vova agree. You're for me. Vova don't want to meet. One Vova here all the time kicks out, then jumps like a bunny in the White House, then jumps out somewhere, does something. We're out of control. Do you believe Zelensky is out of control? You ask me the question exactly the way I would tell you now that listen, why don't we have libertarianism in Ukraine yet? You've been studying for 20 years, that's why you're here. I'm not the president. No, it needs roots here. I wasn't chosen. America, that is, Ukraine did not choose me. That is, we have Zelensky, we have Trump. Zelensky has full power in Ukraine. Just glue Zelensky's election to the period that Trump was president, I believe. Can you tell? Of course. Trump. What does he want? In Ukraine. He wants, first of all, to stop the fighting, and secondly, to start the economic process of the Ukraine-America Treaty. Then he will not be with Zelensky to build a new Ukraine. Of course, the government will change, because he is clearly not on the path of Zelensky together with Trump. What should Zelensky do according to Trump? Zelensky must leave. Not. Preferably peacefully. How to make peace? He has to sign something, he's there. Trump talks about some kind of deal all the time. In this deal, as far as we know, according to the memorandum, the first one is listed well, that Russia's requirements, yes. There are 6,000 square meters, there is denazification, derussification, in short, some kind of crap. This is all written in the memorandum. And then the election. Right. Zelensky is also talking about this now. That's right. But where? And where? So who's resisting? Putin resists. Well, of course, and Zelensky, they seem to be playing together. Putin is resisting. Let's say they're arguing about 6,000 square kilometers. Well, let's say. Right. This is the most important stumbling block. On the front line, or it is necessary to withdraw troops and give 6,000 square meters. And what is Trump's opinion? What should be given? Then you have to give it back, right? Of course. That is, Zelensky is unmanageable. Unmanageable. And he's pushing, but he's pushing him as hard as he can at the moment. And he, realizing that Zelensky was under the wing of these globalists of Europe, he put pressure on Europe, pressed, and gathered them all together and said, let's not fool around. And how? Solve the problem. Yes. Do you think Trump, America, Great America, Super Trump, can put some Zelensky in order and make him do what America needs? Of course. Well, this means that he probably hasn't turned on all the levers yet. Yeah. That is, he turned on the lever for another 30 days. It will push. But? Or push or influence. He acts in two ways. In other words, he has not stopped the weapons to Ukraine now, that is, he goes on arming Ukraine. But he is economically squeezing the noose around Putin's neck from all sides because he has to face this. You say, look, you say that Putin and Trump, well, this is now a common opinion, they have agreed. Huge delegations are meeting somewhere in Alaska, lifting some sanctions, a diplomatic mission. Lavrov arrives with a delegation, conducts negotiations, they agreed with Putin that Zelensky should give in. Well, right. That's right. That's right. And I'm sure it was sorry that it was agreed that Trump is simply not going to give you political power there to Putin. Because there will be elections, Ukraine will choose the president. And I am sure that then the conservative wing will join the process in order to prevent the extremists and racists from the other side. Therefore, in principle, everything is going. Its vector? I just want my point of view. The Trump vector does not change. He turned the ship around against socialism, communism, fascism, and all kinds of insanity, turned on common sense, and is trying to unite people all over the world in order to come over to his side, in order to solve the issue not only in Ukraine, but in general to decommunize society. He's doing it now inside in America, finishing off the socialists. Don't go to America. 82%. And it's all tied up. That's it. 82%. You can't consider. 82% of Ukrainians are now in favor of peace at any cost. Well, with those elementary reservations, that is for peace. Trump stands for peace. Putin agrees on certain conditions. So, we get one Zelensky with his administration with 4 or 5 effective managers there against. He says, no, we will fight. Look, it's just that Zelensky doesn't make decisions for himself. Soros, Mi6, Britain are behind him. In other words, Soros is stronger than Trump. At the moment, it is still valid in Europe. Influence on Zelensky. Soros influential. Of course. Because when everything. He swore an oath to whom he gave Trump, he swore an oath. We need to negotiate with Soros. Of course. And he has now declared RICO on Soros and called him the mafia. And it will be. If Soros is stronger than Trump in influencing Zelensky, these are not Soros and Zelensky's problems, these are Trump's problems. If he admits that Zelensky is influenced more by Soros than Trump, then why are you meeting Zelensky for the third time? If Soros is there in his head, he is looking for common sense, it looks for common sense any millimeter. But it doesn't work out, because Zelensky doesn't make the decision himself again. Here is this sock. Europe, together with Ursula, on which he travels there, drinks wine, has fun, and supports each other politically. Just wasting taxpayers' time and money. That's what. That is Trump such a Maturin, or like this veterinarian, who really feels sorry for the dog? When he cuts off the tail piece by piece. No. Well, Ukraine now resembles this dog, which is being led to the fact that it has already been agreed. There are already some outlines of a general agreement. In this case, Ukraine gets a bomb, it is bombed. There Zelensky agrees to a truce, and Ukraine relieves slowly pieces. This dog was surrounded by dragons in the sock, Europe. And, including on the other hand, the KGB and China are being added there. In other words, this is the mass. At this point, I will say that she is no more than Trump, his team, and the people who work with him. At the moment, the mass for 100 years is on the side of China, the KGB, the SOC, Europe, and the Dim Socialist Communist Party of America at the moment. But step by step, he takes steps every day to stop this socialism here in America, and then help other countries as well. I am sure that the moment will come when dominoes will fall under the weight of transparency, under the weight of truth, which is an example in Europe, in Latin America. He has now taken Venezuela into circulation. Maduro declared a terrorist. I think he can call anyone a terrorist in the future whom he wants to destroy. Now ground operations will begin, except for the sea ones. And he will already take Latin America, as it were, under his wing of a conservative direction. Lulu is still there in Brazil. In my opinion, next year's elections, I think that Trump will also decide the issue, in order to release Bolsonaro. Latin America is already expanding as a proc. I am happy for Latin America. You know, I'm very happy for Latin America. I've never been there. I am happy for the United States of America, for Trump. I am happy for everyone for Europe. Because they wouldn't fall. I'm talking. Everything can be considered only in a complex, globally. You can't consider Ukraine separately or Zelensky separately because it's all a link in the same chain. Well, look, now everyone is saying that everything rests on Zelensky. Yes. Well, he is the commander-in-chief, he is the dictator of Ukraine, he suppressed everyone by force, he is waging war. Everything rests on Zelensky. Me sick social Europe, and all this claque of totalitarians who are sitting in Europe. They're behind him. And yet, he can't solve the issue, Zelensky. In the process, he decides what will make Europe weaker in relation to America, from a political point of view. He is not going to kill Europe. He's going to kill Islamism, and kill the scoop and communism. This is his direction. This is his vector. Does Putin agree to any conditions? Trump agrees to these conditions. You mean? And Zelensky agrees, right? Trump could come. Putin strongly regrets that Trump came to power because it all changed his plans. Putin is sorry. Yes, because under Harris and Putin, Ukraine, I think, would not have been torn apart, but Islamized even more. This is their next plan, what they have done with Europe. The intensity of the war has increased under Trump. Well, Putin has built up his muscles instead of having an end list. Have Putin and Trump agreed? They agreed to stop the war. The war. But I'm not sure that Putin is sincere about this KGBist. He still keeps the muzzle in his pocket. That's 100%. And he can only understand the force. And the power lies in what? Economically clamp down so that he could not sell, because this is a column, this is a column. And secondly, to saturate Ukraine, to give certain militaries, that is, to arm it so that it can defend itself. And that's why we should move on to elections and a change of government. It makes sense. When? Well, this is the most difficult question. You know, what I'm saying is that when politicians come to power, they say 24 hours and 30 days. After my inauguration 24 hours, then until Easter, then until May, then until the 9th of May. Then until the meeting of Xi Jinping, then I give 50 days and that's it. Then I give 12 days, then 50 days past yesterday. The fact that humanity has fallen into this parasitic scheme of politicians and so on. And all these structures that have led to 200 countries simply robbing each in their own way. Then they will also make structures that help to rob, like the European Union or the UN. Complete bureaucracy, and of course this is all as a consequence. That is, there is a cause, there is an effect. I know you're with me all the time. They want to drop to the side, well, to reduce the Ukraine, but it cannot be considered without this no. I say, for a great country to say, that who is to blame for all the troubles of Ukraine? How did we come to such a life that we have a war going on for the 4th year? Do you understand? First of all, if you dig very deeply, then since the Second World War, the Soviet Union was allowed to live together with Roosevelt as a socialist, and besides that, he only lifted up this Soviet Union and stopped it in time to give a Marshall. Then socialism developed all over the world. And this abolition of the binding of gold to the dollar is another crook step towards socialism. Then inflation is what? The Khazars are still Tatars there. You know, they are generally in the primitive communal system war. Are they to blame? No. No, it's not their fault. I'm talking about what? In the 91st year, Ukraine separated from the Soviet Union, declared independence. In parallel, the Russian Federation also declared independence. These are independent countries, and it hit at this time. At that time, the countries that were closer to Europe, they began to pursue a confrontational policy. That is, to sever economic and political ties. They have confirmed their independence with every president. And some countries do not allow the development of non-governmental organizations. Some allowed it. Georgia, there were non-governmental organizations, Ukraine non-governmental organizations. And here there is a certain circle of people who introduced the policy of the United States of America on the territory of Ukraine. Wait, I'm sorry. All countries allowed it, including Russia. This is Putin in the 99th, they're in the 2000th. Cut it off. Cut these off. Because he understood that Soros and this socialist mafia were his Congress. And technically, he is against them. And on the one hand, it is now clear that he did the right thing then, but did Russia follow the path of fascism? That's the question. And they chose a KGBist who changed the constitution. There are pure fascists there. Well, there is fascism. It's all fascism, yes. Yes. And communism is in Ukraine, or what is that in Ukraine? And what do you call Europe now, which is already half full of Islam? Who was engaged in the Islamization of Europe? Who is involved in the politics of Ukraine in Ukraine? United States of America. Soros himself is a man who organized, together with the Central Intelligence Agency, a certain system of influence. 190 organizations brainwashed, received money and brainwashed Ukrainians. I am the Ukrainian who has been brainwashed for all these 30 years. I also believed in America. And here's America. In the end, we ended up in a war, but here's just a nuance. We found ourselves in a war. America gave us help, money was allocated under Biden. Thanks to Trump, he gave javelins, someone gave shovels there, someone else gave helmets. There's a lot of distance here. Ukraine is fighting with people. And now 30 years have passed as the leader of America, the leader of the entire free world, who fights for Christian values, saves Christians. He says, "This is not my war and America's, this is Europe's war." He can say whatever he wants. I repeat once again, the vector for stopping the war has not changed. And he does it accordingly with the situation that is obtained today. Step. Every day he takes a step in order, first of all, to help Europe, even with his recommendations. He opened people's eyes by saying that you have two problems, Islamization and this climate of climate change, which you have robbed both America and the European Union. It's all connected with Ukraine, because this theft is now sitting in Europe and in Washington to dry the swamp and dry it. And it's the same in Ukraine. If someone accuses Ukraine of being corrupt, the biggest corrupt country is America. And Trump doesn't hide it. He says that for the last 50 years, he has been saying all the time that America is going the wrong way. She's going there now. Here it is necessary from the side of Ukraine to attract other people with our conversations to side with Trump in terms of what he is. We are on Trump's side. We are all for Trump. I'm for Trump. And who? I'm asking Trump a question. How many of us are there? 5 or 10? Well, how much? Ukraine for Trump. Ukraine is fighting for Trump to weaken Russia. What are you? The whole Ukraine is for Trump. Only Ukrainians say, Trump, you are the only one who can stop this war. You yourself, he says, if not for Trump, never stop war. And they cry out like these, like bunnies say, save us, stop the war. He'll be patient for 50 days. 30 days to be patient. Yes, and now, and then Ukraine comes to the yesterday, votes for gas. It means against Trump. Be patient. That's where Zelensky is, his whole structure is somewhere, they are generally going in a different direction. Trump says, turn around. Fuck, I don't want to name them. Turn around in the right direction, stand on. I myself shot a video of Trump changing his position. It was the first time he had taunted Zelensky. We all watched it in the Oval Office. For the second time, he dragged all the leaders of Europe there to his Oval Office with Zelensky. They nodded their heads, agreed with Trump's arguments that the war should be ended, in short, to make concessions, to negotiate. Everyone nodded, left, and started doing something completely different. I agree with you there. Then Zelensky comes to the he is received by Trump. Zelensky tells him that he is winning there, he will soon come somewhere there, I do not know where. And Trump says, go ahead. But he's telling Zelensky this, he's mocking Zelensky, we understand that. Well, behind this is the Ukrainian people who say, stop playing your games, show that you are Trump. Of course. Because you're Trump. Zelensky cannot make a step without the thalassocrats of Europe and Michel. He needs to consult like everyone else. What about sanctions? Immigration policy? No, Trump doesn't need to consult with anyone. He leads his vector and leads his line. And everyone becomes under his system. Who does not becomes, he pushed and the world through the power he seeks out step by step. And the fact that Zelensky has come since the 19th year, and, in principle, nothing. Ukrainians generally consider Trump their president. They believe that Trump cares about us, he wants peace. But Ukrainians say that it's enough to postpone. If you have any obstacle about Zelensky there, then 80% are in favor of peace. Stop this war. Well, show that you are Trump. Ukrainians say, show me what you got Trump. Well, people are losing faith. I understand that the processes are long, there it does not get, then it does not. I understand that. But people are asking Trump to stop this carnage. You have all the strength that Putin does not want to say. You have pressure on Putin. And how Zelensky walks under Soros. You have pressure on Zelensky. And how do people ask? Are they scribbling in a coward platform, or an X platform before Trump, which is please? That is, that Trump sees some kind of activity from that side, it is not visible. That's the question, so far the light is on the other side. And activity can come from Ukraine if the Zelensky dictator crushed everything. There is no press. There is only the just continues to operate all of these organizations. There are anti-corruption bodies that are also already being imprisoned. There is an embassy, there is OS embassy in Ukraine. I think he will appear only when Zelensky leaves. And the embassy, I say, there is an embassy working. There is some kind of deputy performing functions. But not assigned, a new one is not assigned. No, a new one has not been appointed, but someone also performs the functions of an ambassador. Well, performs. Performs. Know it. Me. When they need to, they interfere, they call, well, Zelensky about who to remove, who to put, who to touch, who not to touch. They can call, right. Well, there is an influence. They are not doing this because Trump's task is to stop the fighting, but to get into the internal structure of Yermak Zelensky. He will remove them all in one fell swoop. He won't. Thank you. Thank you, but Ukrainians will die out before he removes these. No, I see that after all the events will go towards the decision of the question the fastest. Because there are still Trump the curb China's economy, whatever his drawing, there is nothing to shine. And there are also still in question, and therefore besides him inside how much time he takes to fight these terrorists, socialists here. It is also necessary to solve this issue. And it wasn't in 1 year, it was 50 years. That is, the FBI needs to set up a structure to clean the stables. ICE needs it, the CIA needs it. In other words, these months probably went into cleaning it so that you can feel like the owner of the house. Then the Fed is also a social creation, which, under the heel of the social communists, he is fighting this. And if he pushes this rate down, reduces it, I think he can solve it before the new year. Then the economy will simply explode in America. And so what? What is the essence of our conversation? Because I suggest, I do not know you support me, but I think I support that Ukraine needs to be with America. The conservative wing of America. And this is the future of any country in the world. And the sooner, I do not know, some forces in Ukraine are thinking that. What forces do we have dictator? What powers? Well, I see. Well, in any case, it is necessary to combine. We have two forces, Oleg, so that you understand Ukrainian politics. We have two forces now. One force is Zelensky, who, as you say, has Soros in his head. So. And they are corrupt. And the same Sarasiats are against him, along with Pinchik, and this Fiala with their resources. Well, that's for him. And they are supported by Europe and America. Here they can talk to each other. There is no more movement. All the others are crushed, strangled, sitting on the shelves, and are not afraid to fly out. The KGB and Soros have been in Ukraine for 33 years. Two options. The third one. KGB. Where is the KGB now? There is none. There is Soros and Soros. Soros versus Soros. You mean to say that there is no infiltrated situation that? Where? No. Well, I don't want to. Corrupt officials are anti-corruption officers. Corrupt officials are, relatively speaking, those who betrayed their Soros class. These are Zelensky's entourage, and on the other side, there are the same Sarasiats who were in the legal system. They act united. Because both the KGB and Soros, they are against freedom of speech, against. Well, I have already sent KGB members to the Institute of the Family, against common sense in general. And Trump is just offering fresh air. To whom? There you go. To whom does he offer? Srozyatom Zelensky. To whom? Well, I tried to talk to them for a while and find common sense there, but it's not there, unfortunately. Trump suggests doing something there. There is a dictator in Ukraine. Usually America overthrows dictators. In this situation, it turns out that they are talking to the dictator, continue to talk, and continue to fight. I'm saying that it's good, you used Ukraine, you weakened Russia there, everything is fine. Can we stop the war? Everyone is confused. Who is with them and who is not with him? I'm not in the sense that I'm against it. I'm for Trump. I'm just asking myself questions. How did it happen that Ukraine, under the leadership of the United States of America, began this movement to Europe, to NATO, and it came to war when Russia attacked treacherously and seized part of the territory? And after a while, when the president changes, the president says, "It's not mine, it's not America's war. We don't need it." Well, even it looks, somehow. Well, not good. I understand that it is unfairly called, but this world. It's a monster? I was thinking about this. Well, how could you say that this is not America's war? When the presidents prayed for America, one after another, gave carte blanche to Ukraine, agreed that it was going to NATO. Well, 70% of NATO is America. And to have the same one there. But these are all words, and you're not interpreting this from America. Trump means that he didn't start it and it would never have started. This is his interpretation. And the fact that it is possible to present these words in a different way, that this is not America's war. Well, yes, it's not America, but it's America, because America, together with the CIA and the globalists, started this war in collusion with the KGBists, then we can say that. Do you remember when Zelensky threw a tantrum in the Oval Office, about which there was a tantrum? He said that this agreement, which is on minerals, that is, and we all believe that, well, since America is already a fund, it will distribute these minerals, that it will be given some kind of gas infrastructure there to extract it all. Zelensky then demanded, "Give guarantees that you will." This is the guarantee. We went in. This is your guarantee. So he is. After that, you have a guarantee. He calls his personal guarantee. It has nothing to do with the guarantee of Ukraine at all. Such a guarantee. I didn't understand. What is the personal guarantee? Maybe the President of America has in relation to Ukraine. There is a guarantee of America. Tomorrow Trump will die, something may happen. I don't know. But he said, "Here we are making this deal. America is with you." And then 6 months pass, everyone is waiting for the fact that, well, we made a deal in the end. They forced Zelensky to agree to sign. Forced. Then we say, well, look, America can influence Zelensky. What Soros? They influenced him, forced him, signed it to please, did not show the second part, dragged it through Parliament, approved it. It functions. Some $15 million or $150 million have already been invested there from both sides. Something is already working, and time is passing. This deal stays on the sidelines, and there it says, "This is not my war. I am not a party to conflicts at all." At the same time, Zelensky goes to Britain and signs for 100 years, I call it for 1,000 years. Some kind of contract that is absolutely parallel. This is a spit to Trump just in the face. And Trump understands that he is insane. What are you talking to him, negotiating with him? They even forced him to ratify this American-Ukrainian treaty. And then, at the same moment, he goes and signs another contract. What do you mean by that? Well, of course, that there is no logic at all. And just imagine, if Zelensky had made the decision himself, would he have done it? Well, no, you can't build anything logical here. And the fact that you can always Trump, if something is wrong to say Trump. I'm not a Trumpist, and I'm not defending Trump. I just see that there is one healthy force left in this world that can put the world on its head. That's it. But while in Ukraine, you can see what is happening. The shelling increases after each speech of Trump, that he is upset by the shelling, and the shootings are more and more and more. Putin did not respond. Zelensky does not make any concessions. Everyone took their positions. My question is, who can figure it all out, except the Trumps? Except Ameri. Trump is going in this direction, and what I am sure is that he is for the tribunal of these KGBists, and racists and so on, who have brought this world to a nightmare together with Xi's China. And he does not see any kind of future there, because they imagine that he is going to do some business in Russia. He can say something, but as always, how to talk to a terrorist. He needs to put a warm enema so that at least the brains turn on, which are not there. And then he's the Trump principal, he caresses a girl first, and then he'll do her tumbarumba anyway. Oleg, and you didn't ask the question, why would the Americans stop the war in Ukraine? What's the point? Because Trump understands that if he does not kill socialism in America and resolves wars in other countries, this socialism will raise its head again, because socialism can exist only when there are external wars, and justify its existence in power forever. And China has demonstrated this in power forever now, Russia has demonstrated it. And Zelensky has gone there in the same direction somewhere. Yes, he's him. I would have sincerely suggested to him that if he had said, "Here I did what I could and I am, in principle, ready to step aside, and let Ukraine choose a new leader," I think he would have forgiven a lot. No, I asked you a question. Who benefits from this war? Who earns money from it? Ukraine is losing, right? 100%. He loses a lot, he loses territories, he loses destroyed cities, he loses people, he loses money, he gets into debts. He loses property, he loses everything. And Russia is losing. She's been fighting this stupid war for 3.5 years. Everything is arrested there. The sanctions are crazy. I have to build logistics in a different way. I lose it. They sell their oil products cheap, they lose people. In order for Putin to stay in power, he needs this war before Pushkin, before the end of his life. He needed a war. Will the euro lose? Of course it loses, but Europe is losing. But it does not get cheap energy resources, it loses. And who wins in this war? China is number one. America. Socialists, I agree. Well, isn't the military-industrial complex not making money from the war? It doesn't sell. Doesn't Trump say every time that we have now raised NATO payments to 5% with the help of the war in Ukraine? We have joined new countries to NATO, we sell weapons, we don't give them. Earns? If Trump was fixated on maintaining the organizations that make weapons, he would not have stopped these 7 wars that are on the earth. Because all he would this country, and gave this country, and so on. As a moralist, he has a completely different vision. He doesn't want people to be killed. It's natural that these socialists and communists are normal, they can't understand it. Oleg, I put another question. We're dealing with you, we're asking questions. I want to sketch out questions that I don't have an answer to. All right. If Europe loses, Ukraine loses, Russia loses, America earns. Why the fuck should she stop the war? What makes you think that there is no other way to develop your economy in America? Well, we're actually talking. In fact, 30 trillion. To date, the sale of weapons has come out on top, it has risen in price, it is produced more, it is sold to Europe. It is delivered to Ukraine. Well, they earn well. But Trump himself boasts, says, we make great money, great deals. He even said that in his last speech, he says that we are not participants in the war, we are sellers and intermediaries. Sellers and intermediaries. He trolls and sarcastically tells these jerks that to Egyptist Putin, that to Sora of Europe. He says, you are dolbodjedly. Do you want to fight? Here, fight. And they don't agree, Europe without Trump. Right away if anything. Oh, come on Trump. And Trump said so for your money. And it is very unprofitable for them, because this is a socialist communist telesocracy, it will fall tomorrow. Because they will need to take money, cut social services, fight illegal immigrants. That's it. And this. Death. To put it bluntly. Yes. We are all stopping the war. In the foot. Everyone stand. In what way? Everyone stand. The power of America makes you all stand still. Well, and sign the agreement on the line of contact there. Putin will say no, what's next? But this is America's business, it's a powerful country. Well, and why? And why should Trump bomb her or attack her when this collar is already narrowing, and he will tighten it around Putin's neck anyway? Purely by economic means. And this tariff scheme that he has developed, it works perfectly all over the world. You are not my ally, but pay more, because I am the market. And you're a column. And you're a manufacturer of small parts. Therefore, here as it were, he has arranged all the positions of who firm, who and now, on this basis. He begins to negotiate from a position of strength. Well, the fact that Putin is already there is no brain, one Botox, so they have to fight to the end. Therefore, there is a lot of resistance, because it turns out that you are against Trump. China, the KGB, Socialist Europe MI6, with which, by the way, he agreed, and I do not exclude that he agreed with MI6 in what way? That he will not hinder the pressure of the UK on the European Union. Not for Europe, individual countries, but specifically for this socialist foil, a cap with foil over Europe, which milks Europe. And therefore Ursula, there is $200 million for some African country, the fuck knows where she sends the money. That the Europeans don't have anything to spend money on. And why the hell did Zelensky go to South Africa? What's that over there? I'm not. Weapons. I don't know. I didn't pay attention to that. Because they got drunk and started stealing, you know. And Trump highlights it all. They don't like it, because they will lose power tomorrow, and they will all be in prison. That's the question. These threads that Trump is rolling out now, starting with Gummy Bear here and Soros, will get to him unequivocally. It's not like all of them are drawn to Ukraine, and to Europe, and so on then, accordingly, the conclusions will be correct. Therefore, what I'm saying is that Trump takes steps aside every day, in favor of every Ukrainian. Because the less of this in the world of socialism, the greater the chance that Ukraine will stop this war and perhaps never start again. Because if Ukraine will enter into an alliance with America, but it would be a Liberty Island, an island 5 to 10, in the territory of the Eurasian space. Yes, you can call me a dreamer now, but I have 20 years of a dreamer named. Well, you have the basics. In life, I crashed into reality. It's just that you were born 30 years earlier. That's it. And so it turns out that your steps were correct, only they had no basis, because the KGB and Soros would have devoured you. If it could be good that you didn't work out then, because I think you would have finished badly. And at the moment we already have a platform, we already have something to rely on, there is already a base. Where some common sense is already standing from head to foot here in America, and says, guys, we will build the economy. We will make a golden age from America. Come with us. But they don't agree, because they will all lose power. That's it. That's where the resistance is. Therefore, to consider purely through the prism of Zelensky himself and so on. Well, he does not solve the issue, and did not solve it as they put it in the 19th year, so he stands there. And the fact that he is profitable as a telesocrat, because he drives, hugs them, raises political points. This is why it's impossible to talk to you and solve issues on video right now. We need to go, because we need to shoo-shoo, then we need to go to a good restaurant, drink good wine. And the day passed and everything is fine. And bombs are flying from the other side. Yes. And bombs are flying from the other side. And Trump speaks at the United Nations all the time, he says everywhere. 7,000 young people die a week. Okay, I'm very upset about it. I'm considering. Disappointed me. I'm considering your pressure. I'll call Trump and say let's still Balashov is already tired. Ukrainians are tired. Ukrainians had great hope and believed in the United States of America. It just happened. They do not say this in the future, because I am sure that everything will be solved by stopping the war, and the alliance with the United States will give a boost to Ukraine. Because common sense is coming back here. He has to. This wave should reach Ukraine as well, and it's faster. I hear forecasts that there will be 20 million residents in Ukraine, but it's still necessary, well, to look at reality. The state of society, into which it has now turned with the help of Soros organizations, with the help of local authorities, with the help of the unbridled SBU, the prosecutor's office, the cops of Zelensky himself, and his entourage. What steps are the United States of America taking today to help the unfortunate people? Here she says, damn, well, they crushed bombs on their heads from all sides, prosecutors are raising tariffs. Some kind of nightmare. Demographically, it will be possible to solve it only by economic means. In other words, there will be a successful Ukraine. The demography will not go anywhere. Only it will be necessary to put a big stop to Islamization, because the fact that where Europe has got to, thank God, Ukraine is not there yet. And if there is an influx of people with minds, with money, these are the people. It is not needed in Ukraine. How do you feel right now? Who is Trump with? With Russia or with Ukraine? He is with Ukraine because he is always with the victim. He's a moralist. He understands who is who. KGBist. Who is Trump negotiating with? With Ukraine or with Russia? He leads with two. Only the aggressor does not agree to stop the war. That's it. Because China also has a big say there and can decide whether there will be a war or not. Therefore, Trump is acting globally. That is, they are negotiating with Ukraine, right? 100%. And I'm sure Zelensky already agrees to everything. This is what he will tell on television, and Trump has played along with him. Yes, go there and conquer Kazan there. Well, it's a bluff. It's understandable. And he's already sarcastically just saying that you're building me a clown here all the time. Well, I'll tell you where to go and what to do. Therefore, Trump is on the side of Ukrainians. He is not on the side of the bureaucracy here. He is pushing it. He is also an opponent of this bloated socialism, including in Ukraine. And he is ready to crush it too at a certain moment, when, God willing, there will be elections and so on. I think there would be an impact. Therefore, step by step, and the fact that I urge our viewers, please, go to the Coward platform, to the X platform, and write to Trump, please, we are Ukrainians for you. In other words, it is media at least to show that what we are, and that the marathon has not killed everything yet. Well, in this way. But the fact that people of common sense should unite all over the world. By the way, I have already found people there, and in Argentina, and in other countries, who understand our way of thinking, that is, they understand what a state is, what an individual is. I think we should even unite at the international level, because either they are here or we are here. And the more we have, the less was said Havermile. So, yes, this is by the way, everywhere a red thread runs in the marathon campaigns. Because leftists, the more of them, the more of us, the less. Yes, and the leftists have learned, you know, to seize the mass media, and pretend that there is no other. And we exist, and there are a lot of us, we're just not on the air. And I am still sure that it will come to a point that America will need to support its conservative wing in the media. That is, no, not as propaganda, but simply to convey the truth. Because the truth is only one left, and that's it, there is no other one anymore. And you and I are in a small space that they can close with one click. By the way, Trump has now received $29 million for that from YouTube, for the fact that they closed it for the first time. No, this is a precedent, and you know America. Here, legally, collectively, you can make a claim. I'm not saying that we will succeed. And in Ukraine, Zelensky, if he files a lawsuit against someone, will also receive any amount. Anyone. Putin, if he files a lawsuit against any publication, will get everything. The fact is that they do not need to file a lawsuit, they are the power. I'm saying that. I'm not surprised. And I will climb. They will come. They decided, how are they? It's not suit him anymore. They made a deal. Yes, a deal? In other words, Trump says, I will judge you and torment you until you pay. They say yes, we'll pay you this amount. Trump himself was paid, and we will jump out of this. Yes, we got more. Not very well. That is, when it turns out that Trump needs it, he acts quite decisively. But he has thousands of small steps every day. It seems to me that for a Ukrainian, at least for us, there was a mistake by Trump in the sense that he said that this was not his war. This is a Biden-Zelensky war. It seems to me that on behalf of the state, this sounds scary to Ukrainians. We have lived with the dream of America all our lives, starting from when it does not depend, and even before that. Goodbye America plays in people's heads, which I will never see, yes there. I have a request to all Ukrainians. Don't listen to Trump's direct speech. He says that Putin is a friend, he will tell you more, but he acts. That's why, if you find fault with his words, and this is what leftists only use. But you say he's in favor of giving up 6,000 square kilometers. But he gave it, he says, do you decide among yourselves? Who doesn't? Well, everything is clear. That is, Putin agrees, Trump agrees, Zelensky does not agree. But where to? Let's push Zelensky, right? Well, it turns out that now the pressure is on Zelensky to give Ukraine 6,000 square kilometers. On the one hand, Putin is bombing cities, seizing some territories, crawling with this confrontation, and on the other hand, Trump says, give it to these 6,000 squares. Just imagine, I'll say, yes, I agree that Ukraine should give 6,000. Can Zelensky say that? That is, even if I talk, I will be under a big question, that I am some kind of collaborator, you know. And the fact that Ukrainians need to figure out that it's not in the territories of the case, it's not in the territories of the case. You can give away some part of the territory, and then return it all economically, they will come themselves. That's not the point. It is necessary to agree at any time. The most important point that I think Trump holds, and not that he does not allow Putin's political force to take power. That's it. That's enough. Where? Where? In Ukraine. There are no politicians in Ukraine for Putin. It's clear, but he can do it in some other way. He killed the whole Russian world in relation to himself. There are no political forces in Ukraine right now who can say that they somehow support this policy. Units can speak for some kind of mythical union. Still the same. No, Ukrainians have clearly formed that this is the enemy. In other words, Putin has made Russia an enemy of Ukraine. That's it, period. There can be no political forces in Ukraine. But he achieved this. And this enemy can be stopped by Trump, but at a certain moment, when he will be completely economically taxed from all sides. The resistance is just naughty, because there is both China and the KGB, and what I have already said. I do not want to repeat with this Europe. Yes. Where is the full dup, where we were dragged all this time? It turned out that this is just a soap bubble, which is unknown whether it will survive or not. What? For 2,000 years he survived. Well, yes. There have been. Yes, of course, only England will become Sharia, but everything will be fine. And since Shakespeare's time, the invasion of people from Africa has always been towards Europe, to the south of Europe. Now they have already reached the north. I sometimes even question some of these processes leads. I think we will see soon how we will get to some peaks. It's like you have to hate your countries in order to launch Islam for free and put them on social networks. So this is murder, Trump told them that. This is DD when said for the first time in Europe, they were shocked by it there. That is, what kind of senile person can say that it's okay to open doors in America and let in 20 million unknown people? Who does this? These are the killers of countries. And I think that step by step now it will be seen who it is. And it is possible that there is some crazy Islamist who plan to Islamize Europe, but I also see China behind this. Because China is interested. Maybe he needs any African, Islamic religion. When China comes, everyone there stands up to the Chinese and digitized slaves. And they don't care how to mix everything up there. Therefore, the root of evil Trump understands that because of. He criticized Kissinger all the time for this policy of his. How could it be possible to transfer all production to other countries while drowning their people in taxes? And it started with Woodrow Wilson from the 13th year when 1% lead. And it was moving step by step all the time towards socialism. And there hasn't been capitalism in America in the last 100 years, because I can argue that there were failures in hard socialism and a little less. Because such a usurpation of power, even by these two parties who come into power for life, and nothing goes anywhere. So this is where Trump is acting in a plan to change the situation. In general, I believe that he should outweigh this pendulum to the side between the MAGA conservatives and libertarians in the future, where there will be common sense to fight common sense. It sounds fantastic, but if this is humanity and America wants to survive, it must find a vaccine against socialism, because it will never end. Therefore, I think that I look positively, well, with optimism, that after all this is not something that depends on Trump. It is already, in my opinion, and humanity has realized that their main enemy is bureaucrats together with the state. And with what? And this spike, it has a pathological effect. It develops socialism, because socialists benefit from bureaucracy. In other words, let's go back to Ukraine. There. We'll end the war in Ukraine. Yes. But in the next 30 days. Well, what do you want me to pull? Him. I just don't surprise you, because I really know what we know there about Trump's plans. We can just argue that different deadlines were set. When bloggers say this, it's one thing, it's their opinion. They feed on information there from the White House, then from the Kremlin, then from the bank. But now the situation is that, in my opinion, the 15th deadline is already being set, and it does not work for the 15th time. But I'm really going to call Trump after our conversation and say stop naming dates. But you gored already with these dates. And if he doesn't call the dates, then he will. When everything is fine. That is, if he had not said for 24 hours that he would end the war, then he did not say that he would finish by Easter. Then he did not say that he wanted to establish peace for the sake of the Nobel Prize. Then he did not say 50 days, 12 days, 40 days. But now, he's a talker, he likes to talk, but the most important thing is what he does. Therefore, pay attention to the steps I have taken over the past 8 months. And this is not a single step back towards defeat. Everything is in the direction of getting a result. That is, he works for the result. And he is not a processor, like all politicians in Europe, including in Ukraine, who have passed the day and do not care. He works for the result, he understands that he too. He's how old, and needs to do everything in time. Yes. So I think he's in a hurry, but, in a hurry, yes. Yes. But everything around the environment and circumstances dictate the situation differently, with which he must take it into account. And move on. Well, let's hope then that Trump is in a hurry. Well, Ukrainians are also in a hurry. We are nervous, everyone is worried. The war continues. Who is to blame? No one is to blame. And who is to blame then? Putin is to blame. Did Putin attack? Attacked. So it's his fault. That's it. But the war continues. It's his fault, not his fault. I think that the time will come and Balashov in Ukraine will build what he has planned. And yes, and so we'll see. I'm going to call Trump today. Tell him maybe he will give up these numbers. No, he has already declared everything there for 30 days, yes. No, that was his last one. The last one. It is not anymore. The last 30 days, right? Yes. But in any case, there is hope that Sybiga said that the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine said that most likely the war will end in the 25th year. There was a stir in parliament around the elections. In other words, something is probably going on inside the team of President Zelensky. Something he knows how the war will end, something he can't voice. And today I heard the news that the intensive negotiations have already moved into a specific phase, where all the problems of the global world are being solved point by point. And that Ukraine is embedded there with the solution of the issue at some stage. I understand that this stage consists in the fact that as much as Putin captures, so much will be. Therefore, there was another statement by Putin that he wants to increase the pressure and crawl inside. This gave rise to the article of the hostage, which says that the confrontation of drones is stuck technologically. But the Russians are still closer to solving this issue, that is, to a breakthrough. And of course, when you look at how cynical the world is from this point of view, that we are negotiating here. And people are being killed here, and the collapse of the front on the territory of Ukraine is about to happen. Catastrophic consequences. Yes, there is such a moment. It's hard to disagree here. And of course, some people are starting to lose faith in America. And did we turn there? Because where we see that there is a slight weakening, I say that Ukraine was ambushed by the fact that we were strong in spirit, fought and gave weapons. And the war lasted for 3.5 years. But the Georgians are weak in spirit. The war ended in 5 days, they surrendered in principle, and live happily. Without visas with Russia, everything is fine in Georgia. Bombs don't fall. But the Belarusians was the faint of heart, gave up, lay under Russia, they have not dropping bombs. Moldova is also the faint of heart, their Transnistria conflict is not satisfied, and slowly goes to Europe myself. And preach in the constitution of NATO membership. In other words, it turns out that weak-spirited countries live in peace and harmony with themselves, continuing to develop and move to Europe. And Ukraine, which is strong in spirit, has been at war for 3.5 years. There is such a situation at the moment. And here the main thing is what? The main thing is that the people who have survived all these nightmares, so that the soldiers who will return home, so that they at least understand that they have stood up to this country, and this justifies their hopes. Because they're coming back now, it's a nightmare. In other words, they won't even be able to adapt in this chaos. Therefore, what is the point that in the future, Ukraine should economically prove to the whole world that this confrontation was not in vain? But in a different way, what is it all for? That is, the war puts up not the best people. Unfortunately. Sorry. And yes, you're getting out of it. So that's what I'm saying, that unfortunately, it turns out that Ukraine, as well as the tool, was used, and today they seem to be relieving themselves of responsibility. This is the only claim I have, that America cannot be relieved of responsibility for Ukraine. Since the Allies have armed their for so many years, since they have already signed these mineral deposits, it seems to me that it is unacceptable to declare that this is not my war. This is Trump's war. Moreover, It may not have been his war at the beginning, his cadence, but when a year has passed, it is already Trump's war. It escalates into a war on Trump. God grant that Ukraine will get stronger and become a strong economy, and the Moscow region will remain from it. And I think Ukraine, with its strong economy, will still be able to demand reparations in the future. But only when she becomes strong. So far, there is nothing to make claims in this situation, and there may be claims over time. So, Finnish variants live for a long time, for 80 years. Yes. So if the Finlandization of Ukraine happens with the rejection of the territory and reconciliation and with a neutral status, then with a neutral status you will not demand much reparations. You'll just have to live. Austria did not demand reparations from the Stalinist or Soviet Union. No, she still lives neutral and feels good. Yes, the fact is that the tribunal has yet to pass over the Kiribati, over the communists. And what is the contract for? That's what the Yalta Global Compact was for. And even Germany received help under the Marshall's Plan to recover. In other words, the losing side received money for restoration. Well, it happened. That is, what the world has already come to, starting with the results of the First and Second War. And reparations in the future, or expectations, lead to the grievances of nations and nurture a new fascism. Therefore, there will probably be no reparations. Not necessarily. I think that if a healthy society understands that reparations are not like revenge, but just normal, who is to blame should pay for it, that is. But Hitler was to blame, the Nazi regime fell, and the people of Germany, well, what is it to tax a turnip? I think that Ukraine, given the fact that only pieces of Russia will remain, then there will be no one to be angry with. It will only be necessary to impose sanctions, and these reparations, on their oil products, and so on, energy carriers. That's it. And against whom will Ukrainians tune in? It was the fascists who seized power in Germany. They invented, yes, they found the extreme Jews. And then decided, well, like the fascists, to seize other territories, because Stalin was the same fascist on the other hand. And it was as if fascists were fighting fascists. This is not a reproach to those my grandfather also died, went missing in this war. But as a mode with a mode, I say. And the fact that people have suffered. As always, regime with regime declares war. They don't take the stick, go to the ring, and fight among themselves, and send people there. And all the time it's been repeated for how many times? I think this is exactly what is happening in America, a rethinking of everything that has happened in the last 100 years. What has happened in the last 15 or 20 years with all these Obamas, the Bushes and the Clintons, the mafia? It's already Trump did not hide, he calls her that. This is the good one, that Balashev is crying for property in Ukraine, he doesn't give a shit. The fact is that Balashev has property in Ukraine. But you ask yourself, does Zelensky have property in Ukraine or not? And Uvarova? And they have property, but they have all their property abroad, dear ones. And just the only patriot is the one who has property on the territory of Ukraine. And yes, I have suffered from the fact that I now have frozen assets, the property is standing, and does not work. But only because I believed in the country. I bought exclusively in Ukraine. I believed in real estate. I believed in the rule of law. And when you write that Balashev suffered from the regime, you are not outraged by the regime. The anger of Ukrainians has been eating me up lately. How do you like Ukrainians to finish off the week? The one who suffered from Zelensky, the one who said that he was a corrupt official, first cadenced him, on whom 7 criminal cases were brought, and then achieved sanctions. Some of you are glad that his property was taken away from him. And when they put a detective in Nabu now, when law enforcement agencies have gone to law enforcement agencies, when people are beaten up by the shopping mall, you forgot that it all starts with taking property, attacking churches, hammering these unfortunate Ukraine into all holes from all sides, from Putin to America, Europe, and everyone uses Ukrainians. And you are glad that Balashev's property was taken away and he is not a patriot. But this? Not. So stupid a message that I just decided to excite it. Gennady, it's not from the mind, it's first of all. And secondly, It's always the socialists who add fuel to the fire, who just distract the blow because they steal. And Balashev is to blame, do you understand? Here's the answer. Therefore, it is necessary in the future for Ukraine to reduce this entire bureaucracy by 90%. To make transparent taxes according to your principle, to free business from a moronic state, so that it does not climb with its own filthy hands. And with the support of the United States as an ally, it will be possible to build a lot of things here. So the states are our ally. Of course. The states are our ally. Look how it turns out, when they started closing Nabu, what happened? They rebelled, forced them to replay in the opposite direction. Gathered in the square one use eddy. That is, all these organizations came Sorosovsky and defended it. Look what happens next. Now these Nabushnikov are being arrested and kept in prison. Also, the opposition is being held in prison, put under the sanctions of the same Poroshenko. And where is the voice of the United States of America? Even in the States, some propagandists talk about Republicans being the same repulsive as Carlson is. He says that, well, there is corruption. There is insane corruption. Look, when the constitutional, this is the administrative court in Ukraine, it was before the war, went the wrong way with Portnov. They were sanctioned. To date, an absolutely corrupt country, a bandit country that actually suffocates its population, has completely closed its eyes to the activities of the authorities on the part of the United States of America. But they seem to be blinded, they don't see that there is corruption. There is no corruption. Well, I told my assumption is that he's not going to delve into all of that swamp, because he grabs her. We just need to get everyone out there together, that's all. And it's coming to this. But to do this, we need to stop the fighting and stop the war. That is, step 1 and step 2 will be, and I think there will already be more visible, let's say. I hope so. I hope. We have been hoping for this for more than 3.5 years. We sit and hope that someone decides. Under Biden, they hoped. Under Trump, they hoped. Hope, say, the last to die with the last Ukrainian. So far, everything is being erased like this in Ukraine, when it seems to me that the administration of President Trump is not doing enough politically for changes in Ukraine today. In any case, the Biden administration had its influence, that is, funding was allocated, and they brainwashed in a certain direction. Today, here we are in Ukraine, we do not see Trump organizations, for which money is allocated, so that they are washed for republicanism, for traditional values. We only have orientation. Trump says something there, then he will speak at the then there, but there are no Trumpists inside Ukraine, there are no Trumpists. Yes, because the conservatives didn't work well. That is, if the leftists are able to unite, to make the entire mass media 99% their own, personal, ideology, then the Republicans. But this is done with money. Sure, but they're on their way to it. In other words, they will still have to reformat this radio liberty, and so on, in order to convey information. They will still need some volume in order to even shine what good is being done. Because they highlight everything in a bad tone, turn Trump's words around, completely distort the information. Well, this is every day here in America, is. By the way, people are asking, what needs to be done to stop the war? So we started from the very beginning with the fact that I think we need a tough directive position of the United States of America, in the person of Trump. A tough directive position. I think so, because we have comprehensively studied the issue, and the issues have developed the way they developed under Biden. Since it is necessary to withdraw now in the position that it is, this is how it should be. But in any case, that's what they did in Yugoslavia, when it all went into some kind of crazy impasse. The United Nations Security Council countries gathered, resolved the issue with Yugoslavia, and stopped it very quickly, cutting Yugoslavia into 7 parts. But the Yugoslavs now live in different countries, but everyone is in Europe, and everyone in principle is somehow moving somewhere without a war over their heads. If Trump issues a directive, will 99% of Ukrainians support him? I think so. I think it would greatly influence the opinion of Ukrainians. If he had said frankly, there is no other way for us not to have a world war in the form of a nuclear war now. We have reached a certain climax, we have agreed on universal security, which they are now doing behind the scenes. It seems to me that the Ukrainian society lacks this publicity, so that someone from the authorities would say, not Putin to say, well, the verdict. Not even Zelensky, namely the force that is trying to stop, said, but we have studied this issue. That's how Biden brought it, so the previous administration, these Soros and the Democrats. That's how it should end. And so take it as it is. We give a guarantee to all parties that there will be no more war. We are giving some more weapons there to establish neutrality. We make concessions and demand concessions from the other side. And everything ends. If the Security Council will sign, and the Security Council in principle close, because that's where China, Russia, France, Britain, and the United States of America, 5 countries, 5 leaders can give these guarantees. If there was a directive from the United States of America, I think it's coming to that. It's probably coming to this. Unfortunately, it's coming to this. We may be nervous, it's going on for a long time. Yes, I also have complaints. Okay, thank you very much, Gennady. Yes, we earn. I think that well, we talked normally, and you draw conclusions. I think that Ukraine needs Trump's support for Ukrainians, including Trump. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye.